Hey fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. Let's look at some letters from you. Today we talk about tennis elbow. I got a letter from Ian. I'm going to read it out and I'm going to tell you what I replied to him. Hopefully that can help you in your potential struggles with tennis elbow or help you understand that a little bit more. So he wrote, "Hi, I just found your YouTube channel. I'm loving the content. Had a question that nobody has been able to answer. Dealing with some severe arm pain that prevents me from playing on back-to-back days." And that's quite common. This is not an email I get once in a blue moon. It's quite frequent. Players are struggling with tennis elbow. You might have seen my video with Manarino. He was eating painkillers during matches, he told me. And I've also talked to other players that have huge issues with elbows breaking down. And you know, it's been everything from young pros to older pros that need surgery. Novak, Tsitsipas. I think Alcaraz had the elbow issues for a while. Stiff strings, stiff rackets, hitting millions of balls. It's not their technique in this case, but it's just that they're hitting so many tennis balls over and over again. It's kind of overuse injury. So that's also another thing. I think some players or people just want to throw that thing that you have bad technique because you have a tennis elbow. No, it's not only the technique. That's a part of it, and we'll get to that. But it's also the amount of strain you put on your elbow when you're hitting balls all the time that the pros do. They hit way too many tennis balls, so for the body to cope. So I'm dealing with severe arm pain. Have to limit how much I play. The pain does not feel like my elbow or shoulder. It feels like something in between, deep in my bone arm on the outside of my upper arm. So that's an interesting pain. If it's on the inside of the elbow, it's golfer's elbow. If it's on the outside of the elbow, it's tennis elbow. It's good to keep in mind. Sometimes tennis elbow can be related to some other arm pain. So for example, if you're suffering from some shoulder pain, it could be your forearm that's really stiff. And then I really recommend using a flex bar to loosen up those muscles and strengthen your muscles. And overall, I get to some ideas on how you can combat tennis elbow later in the video. I also have a podcast with my buddy and osteopath physiotherapist who helps me Amos on this channel, so check that one out. It's very good. Pain began as I was using a Babolat Pure Drive 2018. The Pure Drive is a great racket. It's very powerful. You get good spin, good depth, but it's stiff. And this is a very common racket to get tennis elbow. There are other stiff rackets on the market. I don't want to shit on Babolat more than I already do, but it's definitely an arm killer for some players. And then he also used RPM Blast strings. This is a string made for pro players. RPM Blast is a stiff polyester string that is used by recreational beginners, intermediates, advanced. Good string. I mean, Rafa loves it for a reason. It's great control, good spin potential thanks to the string moving, thanks to the coating of the string. But it's not for you average club players in many cases. Use a multi, use a gut, use a hybrid at least. And he was using RPM Blast string 17 gauge in high 50s tension. So tensions is a huge problem for tennis elbow. Don't string so high, string lower. I made the video about Adrian Manarino's tension, 25 pounds of string tension. He controls the ball. He still has issues with tennis elbow because of all the balls he hits, but still he's using a very low tension. So why high 50s? If you can't control the racket with a 50-pound tension, on a lower level, you need to actually get a smaller racket or look at your technique or something, because does not make sense. Stiff racket, stiff string, high tension, 3 recipes for tennis elbow and arm disaster, really. It would also start hurting when I would serve. Serving is a very common problem for tennis elbow. That's where I had it myself. I could play in normal ground strokes, no problem. But on the serve, I used to feel the issue. Same with Manarino when I talked to him. Same with some other pros I talked to. And it's the serve with the lag of the racket and the way you move the racket and the kind of sharp increase in velocity of your swing that can create issues for the elbow. So the serve is a very common problem. The backhand, on the one-handed backhand, is another issue because you're really pushing your arm out in a quite unnatural way with the one-handed backhand and putting a lot of force and meeting the ball. And if you're hitting off center a few times, it's gonna build up to be an issue. So he started demoing after reducing the tension. He started demoing different rackets because I was convinced that it was the stiffness on my racket. The stiffness is part of it. It's not everything, but it's part of it. There were ones that were much softer, but I felt so different that I couldn't get used to it. And that's a typical problem. Like players, they love the feeling of a pure drive, pure arrow, head instinct, whatever, a stiff racket, Wilson Ultra. And they don't want to move away from that. They want to keep playing with that because that helps them get their best tennis. They like the sensation when they hit the ball. And that's an issue. I know that the Clash won't feel the same. It's a great racket for tennis elbow. A DONNAY all wood, for example, won't feel the same. A PROKENNEX won't feel the same. A Head Boom MP, which is also pretty soft, won't feel the same. But you need to really think about your health first. And if you have to sacrifice getting used to a new racket, not playing as well, but at least you can play, I would do that in a heartbeat. Don't let your body suffer because of that. Try to find a racket that works for you and play with that instead. There were ones that were much softer but felt so different. I went to the Bubble Up Pure Strike version 3 because it's a little softer. I mean, the Pure Strikes are still very stiff, so especially if you use RPM Blast, so it's not where I would go personally. I'm playing better and it hurts to even try use my old Pure Drive. I'm using Bubble Up Multi Strings XL 16G. Great. Go for the multi and play with that. If you can go for a softer racket with multi, it's even better than the Pure Strike, but at least you're going for a softer string, and that's gonna reduce some of the pain. I still felt arm pain if I played too much. Overplaying is one very common issue. If you play too much, these things might pop up, even if you have good technique, the right equipment and so on. Playing too much, play with balance. Try to do always some gym in between, some rehab, stretch, warm up, ice afterwards if you have pain. There are many ways you can combat tennis elbow and make sure you prevent arm issues. So don't overplay. That's one of my recommendations. Is there anything you could recommend? Either rackets to try next that play similar to the Pure Strike. Maybe there's a string I should be trying, or a tension. I'm afraid if I switch to a drastically different racket, I will force to adjust my game. Yeah, that sadly that might be the case. And I don't want to invest another $250 into a racket only to have the same pain come back. Completely understand rackets are not cheap. I'm really at a loss, and the biggest thing holding me back from improving my game is that I can't play as often as I would like. So big thanks to Ian for the letter. I think it resonates with a lot of you out there. And it's a typical common issue. You have a racket you really like, you have a setup you really like, but you still suffer from some arm pain. And it's not easy to find rackets that are comfortable and feels the same as a stiff racket. Simply not possible. From a racket point of view, if you're coming from the Pure Strike and you want a racket that's kind of similar in head size, decent stiffness but more comfortable, I'd consider going to a Boom Pro. The Boom Pro is pretty soft for its stiffness rating partly, and it's also a little bit more forgiving than the Pure Strike. Other 98s would be a Clash, but it's going to be quite different in feel. But still, the Clash is a great choice if you want a softer sensation. I think you should try a Blade 98 version 8 as well, because that's also at least not as powerful as the Pure Strike, but definitely softer and better for the arm. So there are rackets you can try. Obviously, the feeling won't be exactly the same. The crispness of the Pure Strike is very addictive to some players. I completely understand. And that power, you know, you want it for your game, but sometimes you have to sacrifice something to be able to play more tennis. And usually you get used to new rackets. I know that as well as anyone, pretty much, with all my racket switching. Let's go into what I would recommend overall. These rackets are good ideas. If you can demo, that's good. Using multi-filament, he's already doing that, so that's perfect. Get a flex bar. Link in the description below. It saved my tennis elbow when I used to have it. I haven't had it in a long time, knock on wood, but it strengthens the forearm, prevents wrist issues. My stepfather has it now. He plays almost every day. He's 65. Gave one to him. He's super happy with it, and he doesn't really like me pushing some kind of health stuff to him, but he really feels like the flex bar helped him a bit. Go to the gym, really. I mean, I think if you're playing tennis, you want to play good tennis, you want to play tennis regularly, go to the gym. I think it's such a good idea to be able to strengthen your body, get a good warm-up in, have a strong physique to play tennis is important. So don't slack on that, and make sure you always get to the court a little bit earlier so you can warm up. Using elastic bands, usually a very good idea to get your joints a bit ready for playing. Don't just start hitting hard from the baseline. If you arrive like 3 minutes before your session starts, it's not a good idea. And there are several potential reasons why Ian and many others have tennis elbow. Like I said, overplaying, playing too much, try to get some rest in between. If you have pain after a tennis session, get some ice. Ice the pain. Amos talks about some of these ideas in my podcast with him, so I really recommend that one. I'll put the link in the description as well. And also, if you hit the ball late off center, these things create more vibrations, and that's going to go down to your arm. So working on your contact point and your timing is very important. Hitting the ball in front, making sure you're always preparing with your racket take back, and keeping the footwork going is very important, because off-center shots, that's where the main issue comes. If you always hit the sweet spot, the racket is kind of like a sponge in feel, because the sweet spot is very, very comfortable, even on a stiff racket. But when you're hitting off-center, that's where the issues start. Using a stiff racket setup, stiff racket, stiff polyester string, and a high tension. Try to reduce some of that, if not all. If you can use a flexible racket, maybe you can keep your old string. Or if you at least reduce the tension a lot, maybe you can play with your current setup. You can go down to like 45 pounds, 40 pounds. Like I said, Manarino, 25 pounds. There are all kinds of tensions out there. And stay away from the high 50s or 60, because that's way too stiff of a string bed, unless you're Dustin Brown. There are comfort rackets, a lot of content on this channel. Gravity, Clash, PROKENNEX, Boom, many different comfort rackets, DONNAY. These are all good rackets. They won't feel like a pure strike in most cases, but at least you have a more comfortable setup. You don't have to worry about your arm as much. I see many players gripping the racket way too tight. Try to relax and loosen your grip a bit. That doesn't mean the racket should flop around, but it should be comfortably relaxed. So make sure you have a grip, but that it's not too firm and you tense up when you hit, because that's what you see with a lot of veteran players, that they have shorter swings and they tense up the arm to hit the ball, and then tennis elbow comes. That's my ideas and advice. Work out, ice, rehab, warm up, get a racket that's softer, a string that's softer, a tension that's lower, and these things will go away. But you need to do the work, and you need to sacrifice something to make sure you can play tennis a lot in the future. I've done all this. I've gone through all this. I know the pitfalls, and I think that there are ways around it, and you just have to keep working, and the pain will go away, and you will be able to play a lot of tennis. But you need to get these basics down to a T. That's about it. If you suffer from tennis elbow and you have some experience with that, let me know in the comments below. Keen to hear your thoughts. If you want to support the work I do, please use any of the affiliates. The links are in the description below, such as the Flex Bar there, or buying a racket, string from Tennis Warehouse Europe, or Tennis Only. That's it. Have a nice day now, and don't forget to play some tennis.